I'm Kel and welcome to Kel's Big Picture podcast. I'm super excited to be bringing this to you today, and the idea of this weekly podcast is to help you live your role model life and learn from other real life role models so that you can rise above the daily grind and feel amazing about being you, and take what you learn into your life so that you can live like a role model as well. So let me get started, and let me just introduce myself a little bit. You're probably wondering, who the hell is Kel? What does she know that I don't know? And you know what? I'll give you a bit of a background, and hopefully along the way I'll be able to share some of the things that I've learned along the way, and I'm sure that I'll probably learn from you too, and that's the beauty of life. So I'm a 45-year-old mum of a teen and tween, and I have been a passionate health educator for 23 years, teaching and coaching and mentoring students, both teen and adult students over that time. And I absolutely love what I do. I love being able to help people improve their health and well-being, and I've learned a lot about how to do that over time just through my experiences. And I'm so excited to share some of these with you today. I love the feeling of being fit and well. And love to help other people feel that way too. I worked in the fitness industry for 10 years, leading people into better health and fitness. And for me, that was such a great time in my life. I really, really loved it. But at the same time, it was also something that exposed me to some of my own personal weaknesses. And I learned a lot from that. And I want to share some of that with you also. I have learned the value of living by example. I mean, not only as a teacher, but particularly when I became a parent. It is so obvious that our kids are not listening to our words all of the time. They are watching what we do, and they are feeling our energy. And I really understand the value of making sure that our actions and words are helping others to reach their goals, and that they are empowering them and inviting them to explore their potential. Because without that, oftentimes without that encouragement and without someone showing them the way, it can be really difficult to take the first steps. And so for me, that is super, super important. Now, a little bit on the side, I'm a bush girl. I grew up out west on a farm, absolutely love farm life. And I fell in love with sport as my dad was an avid sports lover, and we travelled all around the countryside for him to play sport and so that we could be a part of it ourselves, obviously. And for me, being the tall girl at school, I'm 5'10", I was that when I was in year 7, and I was that big tall blonde girl. And one of the things that I loved about sport was it was something that I could go into and add value, and I didn't feel so uncomfortable there. And so for me, I've really found a little safe space inside sport. And I understand for many people it's not that, but everyone is able to find their space. We've just got to work out where that space is. It may not be sport, it might be something else. So what I want to talk to you today about is being a rising role model, living your role model life. Now, whether we choose it or not, we are a role model to someone. Now, Big Picture Health is here. The purpose of this is to nurture rising role models. Now, I believe there is no age limit to a role model. If you think about it, a younger child would look up to their sibling, for example. Kids in primary school are looking up to the kids in high school, or they're looking up to their parents, or they're sports stars or a musician. High school kids the same. And as we become adults, we actually look to other people as well and go, how do they do that? I want to be like them. And a lot of the time we sort of say, I wish I was like them, and we forget to take the action, or we don't back ourselves enough to take the action because we're scared of failing. And those people only got to where they are because they failed too. And being a role model is not about being perfect. It's about understanding that along the way you're going to learn lessons that you can share and impart with people that will help them get the courage, or find the courage to take the steps and become the person that they want to be, do the things that they want to do, and that will be a role model for someone else as well. So being a role model is generational, and I really believe that. And it's important that we all take, I suppose, a bit of responsibility for it, because we don't ask to be a role model. we become one whether we like it or not. And we have a responsibility to make sure that, you know, we pass on our lessons in life. So I fully believe that the woman or the person that you are tomorrow starts today. We need to really look at what we're doing today so that we can, you know, take the steps and grow into the person that we want to be tomorrow, and that's living a role model life as well. So what I want you to also understand is those people that we're looking up to, you know, we're thinking, wow, they're amazing, I wish I was like that person. You know, what we see on the outside isn't always what's going on the inside. I can certainly vouch for that myself, and I know of others who, you know, and if you really delve into a role model, and make a connection with them and truly learn and study them, you'll find that that has often been the case for them too. What we see on the outside isn't always what's happening on the inside. So in terms of sort of my journey through all of this, I think that most of you can relate in some way. You know, like we've all faced challenges in life, and the challenges that I face certainly are not indifferent or something that I think is insanely special, but they are challenges that many of us, you know, have faced at various times, or you might have faced something like that. And so I just want to sort of run you through some of the things that I have been able to learn from over my time. And the first, I suppose, is living out in a rural area. And my love of sport, it could have taken me many places, I suppose, but I lived in a rural area and I didn't have the opportunities that some of the, you know, city kids had, the metropolitan kids had. And we certainly didn't have the finances to support those opportunities. And so for me, I understand that, you know, to actually get places, you've got to work hard. It doesn't just get given to you, and the opportunities don't always come by. So when they are there in front of you, you really need to jump in and take them. So I also, I suppose, if we really look at it, had some physical challenges as well, leading to other challenges. And the first I can really recollect is, you know, going into high school. I mentioned I was the big tall girl, and, you know, going through puberty and feeling really awkward and uncomfortable, and that's where I really got into my sport training. Okay, that's where some opportunities came up, and I knew I had to work hard. And so I did. And what happened was I actually went through really long periods of amenorrhea, so not getting a period at all, and that's not good for your body. I just didn't pay attention to it. It didn't bother me at the time, and it's not until later in life that I realized that it was actually a big issue. Not only that, later in life I was actually diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome, and that explained a lot of things also. And I didn't fit. The reason it sort of flew under the radar for so long was because I didn't fit the bill. I didn't look like the person. I didn't have, you know, the typical symptoms. I had a lot of them, but it wasn't really something that, you know, they looked for in terms of finding out why I was suffering amenorrhea and fertility issues and things like that. Now, I suppose in addition to that, I did not help myself because I did train really hard. And, you know, when you put your body under so much pressure, it's not going to function as it normally or probably should. So I did lots of high volume, high impact, high intensity training with all of my rep sports, and then getting into the fitness industry later on. And there was a lot of pressure that I put on myself. I don't believe that it really came from anyone else. I think I do generally put a lot of pressure on myself, and what that led to was some disordered eating over a long period of time, and that did not help me either. Where I really discovered that I needed to pay attention to how I treated my body was when I actually did have kids. And as I mentioned, I had fertility issues. I didn't actually think I could have kids. And, you know, I became pregnant with my son, and we're like, how did that even happen? Apart from the obvious, and it was quite a shock and quite a surprise. And, you know, then to fall pregnant with my daughter, I literally didn't get a period for 2.5 years between having my son and then starting, you know, going, okay, well, this isn't going to happen if I'm not ovulating. So we had to sort of roll through that process as well. And I'm really grateful. I've got my daughter, I've got a brilliant son as well. And I've been able to sort of get through those. But I also, suffered a lot of uterine scarring, and believe it or not, that led to menorrhagia, which is the opposite of amenorrhea. And I had just, really uncontrollable periods for a really long time. And of course, as you get older, it always gets worse. After I turned 40, it became a real problem. And so that was something that I was really dealing with, and that the hormonal imbalance that is creating that is an issue as well. And so made my way through that, or suffered through it, I suppose, and I've been able to find solutions, which is fantastic. And I did, after my daughter was born, had an undiagnosed appendicitis, which actually created a gangrenous infection in my bowel. And so I spent 2 weeks in hospital on intravenous antibiotics, which really mucked with my gut health, and led to the emergence of things like allergies and food intolerances that I'd never had before. And so many of us suffer those things, and we can't really pinpoint what it is that triggered those issues, but we suffer through them every day, and over time that can become really quite draining, and it's certainly not good for our bodies. Now, my pregnancies put a lot of pressure on my body also, probably, accumulation of pressure. And after having my daughter, I went through 3 years of severe back pain and discovered that I had ruptured 2 discs in my spine, which led to a surgery. And the time that I spent pushing all of that pain and that emotion down played out in me also numbing my emotions a little bit, and I feel that I probably impacted on my daughter's health and well-being. She was only a little one at the time, an infant and a toddler, and certainly me doing that wasn't beneficial for myself or for her. I'm really grateful that the back surgery was successful, and I was able to go back to what I loved. And for me, one of my coping mechanisms was physical activity, and so that was great. And then got hit with glandular fever, so I was floored again. And I gradually made my way through that, as you do, and just got a random virus, and it caused a post-viral fatigue syndrome. And so 6 months later, they diagnosed that, and it was too late because I was already burnt out. I was really mentally fragile, and it really opened my eyes to the fact that no matter what you look like on the outside, even people are looking up to you. People are, it doesn't matter if what you look like on the outside doesn't fit or doesn't align with what's happening on the inside, then that can be a real issue. And then add on to that COVID, and I know where so many people are coming unstuck. So, as I mentioned, I really practice pushing down my feelings and emotions and just powering on, like so many women, so many mothers do this, and we, push it all down. And because we are last on the list, we are all the way down the bottom. So we push all of this stuff that we cope with on a daily basis right down to the bottom, and we don't listen to our body, we don't listen to our intuition, to our gut feelings on things, because we're so busy people pleasing. And yeah, we're taking care of families too, but we've also got to make sure that we take care of us. So the problem with doing this is when we're forever pushing our, our signals down, the things that our body is trying to tell us, then what we do is we actually disengage our ability to hear it and to identify those signals. So we really need to make sure that we work on not doing that. And if we can constantly push our emotional pain and suffering, or our physical pain and suffering down, what happens is our body will manifest that suppression in a different way. And often it's a physical form. It can be in the form of inflammation or an inflammatory disease, and or some sort of injury or chronic condition. And our body and tissue holds onto the trauma, And we've got to be really mindful of that, because we can actually cause ourselves long-term damage if we continue to push down what our body really needs and desires. We understand that there's a gut-brain connection. Many people have talked about that. You've probably heard about it. And we actually produce 70% of our neurotransmitters in our gut. So the neurotransmitters are the tiny little chemical messengers that our body sends out to give our cells signals so that they can do their function, perform their function. And 70% of those are in our gut. And when we constantly ignore our gut feeling, we are actually really trying to work against the signals that our body is trying to get out to our cells. And so if you think about it like that, we've got to learn to, really pay attention to our gut feelings, because they are actually really important to our physiology. Now, as we age, our bodies also become less able to deal with the stresses that we're putting it under. We have a build-up of toxins, whether that be from the environment, the physical, activities or stresses that we put ourselves under. Could be social stresses or even emotional stresses, and that builds up toxins in our body. And it actually increases oxidative stress on our cells. And this is where our cells literally can't fight off their free radicals, and the aging process speeds up, and our body cannot heal itself as quickly as it used to. And this all impacts on our well-being. The way we feel, the way our body is functioning, all impacts on our ability to live and love and laugh and find joy and cope with challenges and to find balance. So it's so important that we make sure that we tune in to the signals that our body is giving us. Often we don't talk about what's happening to us in a way that's actually really beneficial. A lot of people will whinge and complain, and we will either join in on that or we'll listen. And what we do is we take up the attitudes of others, and this actually doesn't serve us, and it certainly isn't productive or helpful in helping us deal with the problem. So how do we change our trajectory? How do we live like a role model? How do we listen to our gut, live authentically, support our brain and our body? How do we do that so that the way we are living our life and the energy that we're giving out in life is actually positive to others and not negative? So the first thing is we need to make sure that we understand role models are not perfect. All right? What happens with role models is that they are people that we connect with on a level that promotes our growth. Whether they are perfect or not really doesn't matter. And so understand that regardless of whether you think you're doing it the right way or doing it the wrong way, if someone is connecting with you, that's going to, and if you can show them that, what's going on for you, whether it be done in the right way or the wrong way, is an area for growth, then they will take that on board. And as I mentioned, role models are generational, and that's what I'm talking about. Now, understand too the difference between an influencer and a role model. An influencer is someone who, will put forward ideas, and yes, people will want to take up their thoughts and ideas. A role model is someone who lives by example and helps people understand how to grow. Okay, there is a difference, and social media is filled with influencers. They are filled with people who are not adding value. Okay, they are not giving you what you need. They're not giving you the tools. They're not sharing what you need or what another person will need to help them actually grow as a person. And so we need to be really mindful of where we're spending a lot of our time. Understand that we've become the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. So I want you to ask yourself the question: who are you listening to? Who are you following? Who are you spending quality time with? Who are you learning from? And most importantly, do they align with your core values and beliefs? And if there is incongruence there, if they don't align, if you're actually saying, why am I spending so much time looking and listening to someone that I can't connect with? They are influencing you. They are not being a role model for you, and we want to make sure that we are connecting with role models as well, so that we can be a role model to someone else. So that's just something I really want you to think about. And understand too that if our words and our actions don't align with our intentions, then this is where the damage can become real. We pass on patterns to our children or to those who are looking up to us, and we actually really need to consider our impact on this and consider the impact of that on generational health and well-being. So we kind of need to unschool. I mean, I've been in education for 23 years, and here I am saying to unschool what we have learned. And the reason for this is because, if you don't evaluate and if you don't look at this and say, hey, hang on a second, and then what the programming might not be effective, all right? And so we do need to unschool, unlearn some of the things that we do, that we say, and reteach ourselves how to listen to our body. It starts with how we think, because that is driven by how we feel, and we have to tap into ourselves to help ourselves. We actually need to take responsibility. So how do we take responsibility? How do we take ownership of our lives, take ownership of our health, and we've got to take ownership of our thoughts and our mindset. And this can take time. We actually really need to give ourselves space. Now, our modern life is so insanely busy. You know what it's like? We're running from one thing to the next. It's work, it's kids, it's whatever it is. And we don't give ourselves space and time to connect with what we're truly needing and with what we're thinking, and we absorb what everyone else is, doing and saying, and therefore we're not living in alignment. And so you need to take time, whether that is, through mindfulness or meditation, whether I do it a lot of the time when I'm walking. I don't walk with other people. I always love to take a walk on my own, take the dog with me, but walk on my own and just regather and really evaluate what it is that I'm doing in my life, and then work on how I can take responsibility for that. We also need to embrace our imperfections, and not to the point where we never strive or challenge ourselves, because obviously that's where real growth happens. But we often discover our gifts and our purpose when we do actually challenge ourselves. So it's really important that while we understand that we're not perfect, we still need to push ourselves to try new things and really to discover what we're capable of. Now, I went to some personal development to a big conference, and this is something that struck me right to the core and literally changed the way I live. And I've always sort of thought about, well, what's the purpose? Why am I doing this? And struggled. Sometimes you grapple with that concept. And this made it so clear for me. The meaning of life is to discover our gifts. The purpose of life is to share them. And to me, that is the essence of living a role model life. And I absolutely love the fact that it has changed the way I approach what I do and how I do it, and that I can feel comfortable knowing that what I'm role modeling to others is true to my core. We've got to remember that our role models are not perfect, but they're going to teach us and guide us, and understand that we will do the same for someone else. We're going to be able to help manage strengths and weaknesses, of our own, of other people also. And role models will also teach us not to give up on what we're truly meant to do. We don't always have to travel the same path, and that's really important to understand. You can have a role model that is in an area that has nothing to do with your life, that really, you might, if you looked at it from a really, superficial level, you think, why would you call them your role model? But if they can guide you, if they can help you, then you can really grow from following their lead, not necessarily their path. And I learned this from coaching kids in sport. I know that they're not on the same path that I was on, and I wasn't on the same path that they were on. But I know that because of our experiences and the way that we connected and communicated with each other, that I learned just as much from the kids that I coached as they learn from me. And I think that we need to be really aware of the fact that, like I said, a role model is limitless. There is no age limit to a role model, and be open to the fact that we can learn from everyone and anyone if we want to. So thanks so much for listening today to Kels Big Picture podcast. I hope that you got some value from what I've said today. If you have, please make sure that you give me a little comment, give me a shout out. I look forward to chatting with you and to many of our other rising role models in our next podcast.